45% abstainers past year. No, this is only high school. This is high school, 9th through 12th grade. 30% reported monthly regular drinking past year every month. And then we've got a leftover there of 25% reported once or twice, using alcohol once or twice in the past year. Now, folks, Dane County is bordering on Rock County, and Kate and I were talking through this a little bit before the presentation here. The numbers are probably not going to be that different, Rock County youth to Dane County youth. Demographically, we're talking some very similar demographics. Dane County, this youth survey includes a lot of rural school districts who were included in the survey, small town, from 5 to 15,000 population, and then Madison is included as well. But it really captures the whole county demographic. Probably not much of a difference. Let's take a look, though, of the monthly drinkers. This is the breakdown in terms of those who reported monthly drinking. What we see is that with increasing age or increasing grade, 9th through 12th, kids are increasingly involved with monthly drinking. So this 45% of abstainers is going to disproportionately include younger teenagers, 9th graders and 10th graders. So we're going to come back to the survey, contrasting, comparing abstainers and monthly drinkers. Alcohol affects teenagers differently than adults. And the first observation is that one way that kids are experience drinking differently than adults, your brains as adults, is that they're less sensitive to the impairing effects of alcohol. Now, I'm an alcohol and drug counselor, so I work with youth regularly in a clinical setting, and it's amazing when we calculate blood alcohol level, and sometimes it can get pretty high, and then we ask kids, well, how are you experiencing that? You know, what's kind of going on for you with motor coordination and judgment decision making? It's incredible, the discrepancy between high blood alcohol levels and them not feeling really impaired. We don't hear kids talk about hangover effects a lot. They can bounce back pretty quickly the next day. And in fact, in the past 30 days on the survey, 77% reported binge drinking alcohol. For those who tried alcohol, at least one drink, 77 reported binge drinking, 5 or more drinks within a couple of hours. So when kids drink, they tend to binge drink. Another thing that's very different about the effects of alcohol on teenagers' brain compared to your brain as an adult is they have a greater tendency to take risks while under the influence of alcohol. So, some questions on the survey. Let's take a look at monthly drinkers and their percentage of response, and let's take a look at the abstainers. Past year marijuana use. Monthly drinkers, 66% of monthly drinkers reported using marijuana in the past month. Now, do you think that figure is going to go up, down, or stay about the same for abstainers? It's going to go down. The question is, how far down? 5% of alcohol abstainers reported using marijuana in the past year. Folks, what this suggests is that alcohol is a gateway. We talk about marijuana being the gateway to other drugs. Alcohol is the gateway to marijuana. When kids are not drinking, it's very rare for them to be involved with other drugs. Let's take a look at past year riding with a teen who had been drinking themselves. We got 50%, 1 out of 2 kids regularly drinking, monthly drinking, reporting that. You think this is going to go up, down, or stay about the same for the abstainers? It's going to go down. It goes down substantially. What about past year drinking and driving? Well, obviously, kids who are drinking monthly might be more vulnerable to that. We got a small percentage of abstainers reporting that. I'm not quite sure how that worked out. But what about sex? Sexual activity, sexual intercourse in lifetime. We've got 68, almost 70% of monthly drinkers reporting that. And this drops substantially for kids who are not drinking alcohol. And keep in mind, these are younger kids, but again, it seems like kids who are abstaining from alcohol are involved at huge, huge reduced rates of other sorts of risk behaviors. Vulnerability to co-occurring problems. This is one way that alcohol affects kids differently than your brain or my brain. Again, same survey, taking a look. The first set of questions are about current experiences with depression and suicidal thoughts, past year delinquency, and past year victimization. That is, being a victim of a crime or being a victim of violence, as was discussed a little earlier as a community concern. The rates of these range, but the pattern is very consistent that when kids are drinking monthly, they are at much greater risk for these experiences, behavioral, conduct, and mental health, compared to kids who are abstaining. Risk for cognitive deficits. Again, another way that alcohol seems to impact the developing teen brain compared to your brain or my brain that's fully developed. And what you see here is an image of a brain, an MRI scan that was taken in the middle of a memory recall task in the neuroscience laboratory. 15-year-old male without a history of drinking. So in the study, they would be referred to as the control. And what you're going to see in a moment here is a 15-year-old male drinker with a heavy drinking history, matched on every conceivable variable that would explain brain differences. So, for example, matched on intelligence, matched on parental education, matched on socioeconomic status. Every conceivable variable that would explain brain differences were matched for these studies. This is what the 15-year-old male heavy drinking brain looked like in the memory recall task. What are you all noticing in terms of color, in terms of brain activation? Yes, substantially reduced, less activation. By late adolescence, what the neuroscientists are starting to look at is heavy drinkers versus kids without the heavy drinking history, matched controls. What the neuroscientists are showing is that heavy drinking adolescents have a measurably smaller part of their brain called the hippocampus, which is in charge of memory, taking information and converting it into memory. This seems to be smaller for kids with the heavy drinking history. Less brain activity during memory recall tasks. We saw a glimpse of that a slide ago. Also, retention rates for verbal information, retention rates for nonverbal information are at about a 10% deficit for heavy drinking teenagers compared to kids who are not drinking involved. Now, 10% for educators here in the room. 10% is a big margin, right? Thinking about letter grades, what's the difference with 10% as a margin? It's a whole letter, right? It's going to be the difference between a B and a C. It's going to be the difference between an A and a B. That's how this translates on the ground, probably. Back to the survey. Let's look at our abstainers here compared to monthly drinkers. Grades mostly C's or below, C's, D's, and F's. Almost twice as many monthly drinkers reported C's, D's, and F's compared to abstainers. And what about mostly A's? It's the inverse, that the abstainers reported a much higher rate of mostly A's compared to the monthly drinkers. Monthly drinking, regular drinking, seems to impact learning. And that really makes sense given how much development is going on with the teen brain during this period of development. It really suggests that teenagers are particularly vulnerable to the effects of alcohol. Now, what kind of, when we talk about heavy drinking to get into these studies as a heavy drinker, what was the cutoff for the neuroscientists in this study? The cutoff, how they defined heavy drinking, was binge drinking. That is 5 or more drinks in a row within a couple of hours, twice a week, regularly over the past 12 months. So basically, binge drinking Fridays and Saturdays. That's what it took to get into that study, at a minimum. So that threshold, how many kids do you know who are binge drinking pretty regularly on the weekends? If you know students, if you know young people who are doing that as a fairly regular pattern, that is very, very, very concerning in terms of the impact on their brains.